Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we start, have you read my book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life? It's an uplifting guide to living with purpose, clarity, and meaning, and it's co-authored with my late grandfather. Available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, all the links you need to purchase your copy today are in the show notes. Today, on Focus on Why, I am joined by Dunia Shafik. Dunia, welcome.
Hi, Amy.
Well, it's lovely to have you on the show. And I'm just going to ask, what is it you're focusing on right now?
The first thing jumps straight ahead is the purpose that is really at the core of everything I do in my life, and that is to a decision that I made, choose to be part of the solution, despite what the culture was trying to reinforce on my belief system.
And when you say culture, what specifically are you referencing?
So I have the lived experience of having my eldest son serving a life sentence, and everything just happened so quickly within the span of 4 days. On day one, he was victim of knife crime. And on day four, unfortunately, he became a perpetrator of knife crime. And as a mother in this position, it's very easy to be on the receiving end of all sorts of stigma, labeling, shaming, even threats. And the popular line is, love, you're part of the problem. So I decided to not believe that and be part of the solution instead. So what I'm focusing on is to keep going on this path.
So you started with day one, or you've labeled a day of day one.
Yes.
What made that day one as opposed to all of the other days surrounding it?
Because it's the day where the word normal exited my life and my family's life. It was between 12th of August 2016 till 16th of August 2016. Everything else prior to that was just gone. So that's why it's a very, very interesting question, but that's so true. It was that day when everything started to go in a very different direction.
So you said that day one he was a victim and day four he was a perpetrator. Were they in the same time frame? Are you talking about day one being linked to day four, or are these different days?
So yes, it was kind of a series of events that followed, going back a few months in time. That's when he found a new friendship. And to him, it was friendship, brotherhood. To myself as a mother and to my husband as his dad, we knew that this was not friendship. This was something very, very dangerous. In youth and gang language, it's called grooming. And the first thing they kind of hunted my son Ali was to buy him, I will always remember this, a pair of red Nike trainers. So throughout the trials, we found out what was actually happening. This was an ongoing problem between these new friends and a group of gang for 1 year long. And it's what they call tit for tat, which is a number of attacks, number of stabbings in between. When my son became this new friend, he became the new enemy. So he was targeted. And once again, I might repeat this a few times, in their culture, in their world and understanding, when a situation like this happens, you are very limited with option. They believe that they can't speak to the police because They will be called a snitch, and snitches get stitches. They can't just swallow it and allow it, because then they will be considered as cowards, and songs will be made on them to kind of mock them and be published on YouTube, or just leave the country. And to be honest, even now, 10 years fast forward, looking back, I don't see any of these as a real solution. There's still a big gap.
Yeah, I mean, these are young people. They're youth, that they are operating from a limited set of information, dialogue, understanding of the world. But for them, this is their reality. This is how they deal with things. And it is a learnt behavior that they're learning from each other. So you said he was hunted.
Yes.
How did they hunt him?
Appearance is very important in their life. So if he is not wearing any specific brand kind of clothing, if the trainers he's wearing is an old one, if the phone he's carrying is an old one, all of these are indications that this person is groomable. The next step will be get engaged in conversations and see what are they hungry for. And my understanding, in that age, bursts of testosterone, urging to find answers about identity and belonging, they create a certain kind of persona for themselves. And that usually is the nice kind of outfits, the nice girls, have access to money, have the nice phones, be able to do the cool stuff. When they know a young person is lacking these kind of tools, they know that this person is groomable.
Terrifying. As a mother, you know all of this now.
Mm.
At the time, were you even aware that this was a thing?
Again, thank you for the question, Amy, because I was somebody. I came to the UK 1995. I learned English, done an NVQ diploma in childcare and education, and I was still hungry. I'd done a degree in childhood studies, master's degree in youth and community work. Working with young men in particular was something I was very, very passionate about. So I was with them. I knew what their needs were, but the ones I was working with were not involved with gang lifestyle or involved in knife crime kind of activities. So when this hit home, it was a complete new territory for me. I had no understanding of it. I didn't understand the language they were speaking. I couldn't relate to the needs he was referring to. I don't know. Was I in denial? Was I completely ignorance? Was I in shock? I guess I was all of that, to be honest.
And your son at the time, he's getting a great education because you're, a very educated woman who has an understanding of the needs of learning. So how is he susceptible to this too?
So this is interesting because, and anything I would say is not coming from the place of blame, is coming from the place of reflecting and trying to understand. In year six, my son passed Trinity School's paper exam. And Trinity School is a private school. You have to be very smart to pass their papers. Obviously, this came as a result of ongoing support from home, private tuition, lots of emphasis about the importance of education. Unfortunately, he didn't get the right grade that will enable him to be entitled to the bursary. So he ended up in mainstream secondary school. That was the first left turn, if I could say. That was the first challenging obstacle that we started to face, because now he is in a bigger environment, exposed to more children from all sorts of backgrounds, and he's been introduced to new ideas. It was within few years when I believe it was even immediately BlackBerry and then iPhone and then internet became available. So I'd say he was the first generation going through such extreme level of human exposure to all sorts of conditioning. And I think parents to this date are not able to catch up to understand the side effects of these things on our children. So he was in one place in year six, but by the time he left secondary school, he only left with few GCSEs. And I think this in itself says a lot about what happened in the next 4 5 years.
And you've chosen, in your words, to be part of this solution, despite what the culture is enforcing from another direction. Explain what it's like to be going against the flow like this.
At the beginning, it is a very confusing and scary kind of journey to start. I remember I reached out, for example, I reached out to youth organization in Croydon. This is where I live. And I offered that I can be of support. I have my academic background, I have my lived experience, and I have this passion. I want to be supportive to young people. The lady very like straightforward said it to my face. She said, "No, that's you rocking the boat, and we don't want that." So that was my first instant of understanding that my voice and voice of moms in my position is not welcomed, respected, and it's a voice that deserves to be silenced. This was my first experience of knowing this. However, because the fire is just so real, I wanted to continue with this. And now reflecting back, I understand that I was in the midst of my trauma when I was doing these kind of activities, when I was taking these steps. So logically, I wasn't really doing lots of thinking and reasoning. Therefore, I was putting myself and my family at kind of risky environments by being vocal right from the beginning, saying stuff that I meant nothing bad to anyone. I meant no blaming kind of attitude. And this is something that I often find embarrassing and perhaps empowering as well to share. When my son's situation happened, he was on the loose for a few days, and myself and my husband decided to contact the police, give the information, and make sure that he's getting arrested. The reason I'm sharing this is to say that we are far away from talking from blame narrative. What I am trying to address is the fact that there are lots of external factors that contributes when a young person is losing the path. And if you are not willing to listen to the families of these young people, with all due respect, I think this is just a lie when you claim that you want to find a solution to knife crime and youth violence, because you are just blanking one half of the story.
And you said it was something that you found embarrassing as well as empowering to share. You're 10 years down the line now. Can you remember what that was like at the time to have that decision weigh on your shoulders for you both?
I believe to this date, it is the most difficult decisions that we made. Imagine having a child in prison for 10 years. Stuff do happen in prison, fights do break out in prisons. Like he had an operation, God forbid he had some examinations done because they were trying to see if everything is okay. So there is lots of more kind of traumatic events happened throughout the line. This one continues to be the most hardest decision that we needed to make. And we had two kind of category to draw this decision from. Number one, as a woman of faith, I know that a mother lost her son to grave. So it was a moral duty to make sure that whatever, we didn't know at the time how much my son was involved in this, but we said, whatever that was, he was part of this group, so he needs to be going through the justice trial system. And the second point was, it was either us losing him to prison or to grave. Because unfortunately, once a young person is tangled up in this reality, there is no third option. It's either being killed or being sent to prison. And this is a very vulnerable moment. And I hope that it doesn't come across as selfish and comes across as just being a mother and human. I want him to be in prison and not be carried to be taken to his grave. So, in taking this decision, myself and my husband believe that we are doing both things correctly, being moral as well as being protective as parents.
I can't imagine what you have been going through over the last 10 years, Dunya. It honestly, it is just such a depth of difficulty to process from my perspective, and I'm sure from your perspective, still an ongoing difficulty. Explain the relationship you have with your son now and then.
So they were like few years from end of GCSE stage to when he found these new so-called friends, when my relationship with him wasn't good. I loved him. He is my first child. We kind of grew up together. We kind of learned English together. When I was taking my driving lessons, he was sitting at the back of the car reading his Winnie the Pooh collection books, you know? So we kind of grew up together. But on communication level, there was no communication happening between us. There was anger from his end and rejection and rage from my end. And looking back, I know that that was love. I know from my end that was love, and from his end, that was his search to belong to somewhere. But since he started to serve his time in prison, I know that our relationship, thank God, is just getting stronger and stronger. We find it much easier to have open conversations. He is very involved with my other children's needs, and he is kind of a second dad figure in their life. For example, one of the most difficult conversations was because they did tell him, I don't understand what was the logic behind it, but at the police station they did tell him that your parents gave us your address, while in his understanding he gave us his address believing that his dad was going to take him his passport so he can go out of the country. So imagine a young person being arrested on trial for murder and being told that the people who kind of, in their understanding, sold you is your parents. That base of security and belonging was destroyed. Within time, we have been able to visit this topic, talk about it. And I know logically he understands because he has a son, he is a dad. Logically, he understands that parents will do anything to protect their child. But I know on heart level, the wound is still there, and I don't know if it's ever going to heal.
Yeah. You said that it's at the core of everything you're doing, this purpose to be part of the solution. Explain what you see as being the solution.
The problem is much bigger than anything I can put in words. It's a really complex problem when it comes to young people, youth violence, knife crime, and the criminal justice system altogether. But to me, solution is take one step at a time. When I am able to deliver, for example, the program that I have designed is something that I'm very proud of. It comes from everything I have been through so far. Being able to deliver this program in a prison and have representative of the four masculine archetypes on the wing, so that when the other lads are having a problem, they know who to go to. Do they need to go and seek counsel with the king, or are they just on top of their anger and they want to be in warrior, not in hero? If they are having a very, very difficult moment and they want to go and just sit in a safe place with their lover on the wing. To me, I have managed to change the culture within one prison. That to me is solution, because I understand that when you touch one life, oh my God, the ripple effect is endless. It's this young person or this man in prison, it's his families, it's the community, it's the prison officers who work in there, it's the other guys who reside with him in the same institution. It's just endless. So for me, this is my best version of solution, to make sure that I don't get overwhelmed with the intensity of the problem and be more logical and practical with what I'm looking for to achieve.
What resistance do you have from others to your work, if any?
Stigma is still is a real thing. So imagine for the past, I've been doing this work for the past 8 years. I have been to so many places up and down the country, but I don't do any work in my borough, in Croydon, because I still believe that my voice is not welcomed here. On logistical levels, when I negotiate offering my program to people who work within prison, I have to make sure that I come across as a professional, and there are security measurements that they need to take. For example, I wouldn't be able to deliver in a prison where my son is, or if somebody who knows my son is. So there are obstacles, but there are always solutions as well.
When you say your voice is not welcomed, it wasn't you who performed the act, the crime, whatever you wanted to, how do you want to describe it? But you are also in some way serving a sentence then.
100%. That's what usually they call the families, is the ones who are serving the hidden sentences.
When you say family, who else does this involve, Dunya?
So, for example, Amy, I have my youngest is 12, my daughter is 13, my grandson is 12. On regular basis, I work with this school to make sure that they receive counseling, because they have been through this trauma with me. My daughter, when her brother went to prison, she was just under 4 years old. At that time, she was terrified when the sniffing dogs had to come and search her. That, we know this, is going to stay in her subconscious, even though consciously she might not remember that. My youngest, he finds adapting to change extremely difficult. My grandson, I'll give you an example. At the end of year six, when they were making the end of year book and they write a little bit about themselves, he wrote that he lives with mom, dad, and siblings. The welfare teacher contacted me and said, "We know this is not the reality. Can you check with him?" So I said, "Talk to me. Why did you choose to write that instead of what actually is happening?" He said, "Because I didn't want to look different from the others." So as you can imagine, each one of the children had their version of losing a brother, a dad, a family member.
Yeah, it's huge. And purpose in itself. What does it mean to you to have it at the heart and, as you say, at the core of everything?
It added meaning to my life. Prior to this, I thought I was good, life was good, I was happy. Imagine coming from another country, learning another language, gaining higher qualifications. I thought that was cool. And of course, that's cool. But now life feels very different. It's the purpose is something bigger than me and my family. It's really and truly understanding the sacred meaning of being a human being on this planet, caring for all other humans. It's just something much bigger than my reality.
And your education, Dunya, of all of the degree and the masters of looking after and caring for other human beings, particularly for children, it was there. It was already, the foundation was there. But I guess this wasn't where you thought it was going to head, that particular direction.
Yeah, because the worst place I have been to in my life was to accompany my clients to the police stations to help them navigate away from their problems. But I didn't know that somewhere else in this city, there's a building called the Old Bailey. And in there are like cases and barristers and solicitors and juniors and jury and judge. And it wasn't part of my reality. So my education and my work experience didn't really help because, as I said, this was a complete new territory to me. So it felt like I needed to learn a new way of speaking English, a new way of understanding other layers to the system. And when I see a young person being loud or messy, go beneath that surface layer and see what's actually happening with them. And I think this will only come when you have a lived experience of such problem.
And that belonging that you said your son was looking for, and that was at the heart of the anger that he was experiencing, and the rejection that you had as well from that side of the relationship. What is your understanding of belonging and love and this particular lived experience?
I believe young men in particular, like we know in the past, that there used to be there a ritual in transitioning between boyhood to manhood. And by achieving manhood, that was a societal status to be at. In this day and age, our young men are very, very lost. They don't understand when the boyhood stops and the manhood starts. Reflecting back, I feel like what my son wanted was respect, was access to resources, so he can have access to fun stuff, basic, being able to go play bowling or watch cinema with a friend, the very basic ones, have some level of, or develop a level of independency. But he was borrowing shirts and trainers from his cousin to dress up smartly to attend job interviews. Out of all the interviews he attended, he couldn't find a job. When he tried to do a higher level of college study, I remember that was the year when I gave birth to my youngest. He was crying all night for the first 6 months. As a result, my eldest son was not able to wake up and be in college on time. I was contacting the college, explaining what the challenges are. They didn't listen, so they excluded him from the college. So there are experiences that young people go through. I always say this: there is a young boy, or there's like a teenager boy in class being fidgety and moving around. He gets a detention. If it gets repeated, he gets isolation. Repeated down the corner, just round the corner, he gets exclusion. When he's excluded, he is on the road. When he's on the road, groomers know who's groomable. So within no time, this person is now being groomed and taking part in criminal activities. One of the best theories, and for some reason, I loved this theory when I was doing my degree program, is by a theorist called Vygotsky. And he says, if we want to give our young people something along these lines, it's not exactly his words, to give them best opportunities in life, we need to build a scaffolding system around them. I strongly believe that the scaffolding system didn't even exist in my son's situation, whether because of home circumstances or education approach or lack of opportunities or having experienced groomers on the road knowing how to hunt down the next target. All of this contributed to where we are today. So that's what he was asking for, but this is what the reality was telling him. And from my end, you know how we learn this in One of Many, that mother archetype is that place of unconditional love and bringing goodness and beauty out of people and believing in them. I never stopped believing in the beauty that's inside of him. I still believe that he has so much more to contribute, and he is already in the process of turning his life around. And this is love. It couldn't be anything else. This is love.
And what is it that you could ask the listener to do to help with this solution that you're focusing on?
There's a huge difference between how we look at the criminal justice system here in the UK and how they look at it in the Scandinavian countries. So, for example, in Norway, they are all in with rehabilitation and funding that and empowering that approach because they look at a prisoner as their future neighbor. In the UK, there is obsession with the saying of lock them up and throw away the key. Reality is vast majority of these people will come back and join the society. Do we want them to add more layers of trauma and violence and anger to their skin while they are serving time? Or do we want them to heal and come back to the society and become role models and guide younger people who might think of following unresourceful steps? Obviously, we want them to be rehabilitated and become good citizens in the society. So, my ask from the listeners is, you have power. Public perception is extremely powerful. So please, when you hear politicians and they are again obsessed with the saying of harsh on crime, harsher on criminals, building more prisons, this is not a solution based kind of narrative. We want to come with a community, with a society that believes that, yes, they made mistakes. Yes, they are in the right place to pay back for the mistakes, get rehabilitated. But let's all focus on helping them actually transform their lives because it's a win-win for everybody.
And what I'm hearing in the difference between the two ways of approaches, if you look at Norway, they're all in with the rehabilitation and they're seeing someone as their future neighbor versus the UK's version of lock away, throw away the key. And it's very much love oriented and fear oriented in terms of how the approach is. And you only have to have watched the football, the World Cup football, to see just how loved Norway has been as a nation, as a football team, in their way of approach, even in their collective row that they do as a celebration. And it's just been infectious. Love can win over the fear based approach.
Absolutely.
Oh, Dunya, what a conversation. What a share. And thank you so much for sharing your vulnerable story in so many ways, but also the strength that has come through from this conversation has been incredible. And I don't want your voice to be silenced, because with that, you're silencing the opportunity for a solution to be found, for a solution to be enforced and to become the public opinion instead of staying in this state of denial, head in the sand, just lock away the key version that is happening out there. I've had other guests on the show who are very much in your camp, and I'm very much alongside you and championing that this is the voice that needs to be louder. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. I mean, this is one of the platforms that is actually taking the world towards a better direction.
100%. And it's so important. How would someone reach out, connect? And also, what is it that they could achieve by doing so, by speaking with you? What is it that you could offer them?
So I work on two fronts. I do work with young men at risk as well as men in prison, and that's through my CIC Manhood from Within. And for anybody who's interested, they can visit the website. And I also, later on, it took me years to realize that moms in my position are lonely, tired, burned out, carrying the burden, are the ones who serving the hidden sentences alongside their families. So I decided to do my work with mothers as well, using the One of Many's coaching tools and techniques. And that's through my second CIC, A Life of Choices.
Beautiful. And how, oh, we'll put it in the show notes, but just signpost people to the best way to find you on social media or website, whatever it is you think is best.
So I am present on LinkedIn as well as Instagram and Facebook, and my websites both manhoodfromwithin.co.uk as well as alifeofchoices.com.
Perfect. Well, all of that is in the show notes. I always like to ask just because then someone can remember and go, I'm on Instagram or I'm on LinkedIn. I'll go there and I'll head there first. Again, Dunya, thank you so much for sharing your focus on why. It has been a privilege to be on the receiving end of your share today. So thank you. Do you have some final words, please, for the listener?
Thank you for having me again. And I really loved what you said. Love wins. So instead of being stuck in fear, let's choose to be in love. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.